Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Chiang, and I'm the Liberal candidate here in Markham, Unionville. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. I have called Markham, Unionville, and York Region my home for over 30 years now. Today, my 3 kids and my 6 grandchildren also call it home. I cherish the diversity and inclusive spirit that makes this region so special. Yet, as a 28-year veteran of the York Regional Police, I have also seen the firsthand carnage, the damage that gun violence can do to our community here. That is why I'm running for a party that took decisive action and banned the use, sale, and importation of more than 1,500 types of assault-style firearms. Unfortunately, Erin O'Toole would rather kowtow to the gun lobby and repeal our ban that keeps our family safe. As a former police officer, I know that when it comes to the lives of our friends and family, we cannot afford to go backwards. We need a strong leader who will keep moving forward to keep our community safe and secure. It is my pleasure to introduce the only federal leader who has stood firm on strengthening gun control, on reducing crime, and protecting our families. The leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, Mr. Justin Trudeau.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everyone. Before I begin, I want to recognize that today, the families of Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, along with their friends and supporters, are marching to mark the 1,000th day of their arbitrary detention in China. The thoughts of all Canadians are with them and their families during this incredibly difficult time. The international community has stood in solidarity with Canada on securing their release since the beginning. I want to thank our allies for their ongoing support. We will not rest until they are freed and safely home. I spoke with their families, and I assured them that we will not let up. And I assured them that all Canadians are standing firm with them. We will not back down. Aujourd'hui, on est tous ici pour passer un message clair. Erin O'Toole veut rendre les armes d'assaut légales à nouveau parce qu'il est dans la poche du lobby des armes à feu. Ce qu'on veut lui dire haut et fort, c'est qu'on ne va pas le laisser faire. I want to start off this morning by passing it over to Bill Blair, because if anyone knows why it matters to take action on gun violence, it's him. Bill, you've devoted your career to keeping Canadians safe, not just as Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness for the past 2 years, but also as Chief of Police of our biggest city. I am so glad to have you on the team. Over to you, Bill.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, and I'm very honored to join you all here today. As the Prime Minister indicated, I've spent most of my adult life, the past 45 years, trying to keep the people first of my city and now the country safe. And one of the greatest challenges that we face in this country is the proliferation of gun violence. And we've seen what guns can do in communities, and particularly for vulnerable people right around the world, as we see mass shootings taking place almost on a daily basis in the United States. And Canada has not been immune to that violence. We've seen the massacre of women students at École Polytechnique, worshippers at the Quebec Mosque, innocent Nova Scotians, just last year near Portapique. We've seen the murder of police officers. We've seen people being targeted because of their gender, because of their faith. And we've seen the carnage that can occur when weapons that were not designed for sport purposes, the purposes that are only the legal purposes in Canada, which is hunting and sport shooting, but were designed to kill people. They're military weapons. They're designed for combat. They're designed for their efficiency in killing as many people as quickly as possible. And that's why they're the first choice of people who are bent on mass murder in Canada and around the world. Now, I'm very proud to stand with a Prime Minister who understands that dealing with public safety and crime is more than just tough talk. I stand with a Prime Minister and I'm part of a government that understands that there are some very significant things that a government, every order of government, has a responsibility to do. To ensure, first of all, that we have strong gun control. Canadians expect that in Canada. That we, although we recognize and respect hunters and farmers and sport shooters who use their firearms responsibly, store them safely, and are not a threat to our public safety. But we are also a government that recognizes that there are some guns just simply so deadly that they have no place in our society. I also work for a Prime Minister who understands that the important work that the police do is important. And I remember for almost 10 years as the Chief of Police in Toronto, as the Harper government, with Mr. O'Toole at his side, cut literally hundreds of millions of dollars from the RCMP and from our border services, and also completely ignored the constant pleas from the police for resources and for the banning of assault weapons in this country. And I was very proud on May 1st stand with the Prime Minister as we announced the prohibition of over 1,500 assault-style weapons in this country. And before we get into the gun lobby's semantics about what actually is an assault rifle, we're not talking about some fully automatic weapons that were banned 44 years ago. No one's talking about those guns. Those are not the guns that the law enforcement has urged the Government of Canada to prohibit, the chiefs of police of this country. Those are not the guns that victims groups at École Polytechnique, in Nova Scotia, at Dawson College, in Toronto, in Moncton, in Fredericton, in Alberta, in every place where these weapons have been used to kill innocent people. We're talking about certain guns. And last May 1st, in 2020, we took the important action by order in council of banning 1,500 of these firearms. And to avoid the gun lobby's efforts to obfuscate and deceive people about the true nature of these guns, we named them. We named them by make and we named them by model. And so, we prohibited, for example, the Beretta CX-4 Storm, which was used to shoot 19 students and kill a young woman at Dawson College. We banned the AR-15, a weapon that was used in Las Vegas to kill nearly 50 people, that was also used at Sandy Hook Elementary. And many Canadians will recall the terrible tragedy that took place in Connecticut, where a man armed with an AR-15 rifle, legally acquired, went into that school and killed over 20 little kids and 6 teachers. Little kids. And the reason he took that gun is because it's the most efficient way to kill as many people as possible. And so we banned those guns. It was the right thing to do. One of the guns we also banned was the Mini Ruger 14. That was the weapon that was used at École Polytechnique to kill 14 Canadian women who were targeted only because they were women. That gun has no place in our society. None of these do. Now, Mr. O'Toole, in order to win the leadership of his party, had to make a deal. He had to go and seek the support of the gun lobby. The gun lobby, who we have seen with their perverse impact on politics in the United States, reached out to Mr. O'Toole. And he sought their support, and he got their support. He took their money and he took their support. And in exchange, he made a lot of promises to them. We know he made those promises because he bragged about it, and so did they. We know that he promised them that he would return these weapons back into circulation in our country. That weapon, the weapon used to kill women at École Polytechnique. He promised them that because they make literally billions of dollars each year in the manufacture and sale of those guns. And then on Thursday night, he also, I should mention, made it very clear in his platform of his intention to keep his promise to the gun lobby. Mr. O'Toole is not working for Canadians. He's not listening to law enforcement. And the chiefs of police in this country have repeatedly urged the government to ban these weapons, and when we banned them, they've made a statement voicing their support for that ban. He's not listening to the victims of gun violence. He's not listening to communities who care about their kids. He's listening to the gun lobby who profit from the sale of these weapons. And last Thursday night, when it was really just put right to him about what he was going to do, he lied. He attempted to deceive Canadians. He said that he was not going to reverse the assault rifle ban, but he wasn't talking about that gun, or the gun that have been used to kill innocent people in this country over the last 25 years. No, he was talking about something that happened 44 years ago. At least that's what he tried to pass off as the truth, but it wasn't the truth. And the next day when he doubled down on the same lie, it was actually interesting that the gun lobby, their spokesman came up and say, no, they wanted to reassure their people. Aaron's going to keep his promise to them. He's just trying to deceive Canadians now. And so, you're now asking the right questions. Mr. O'Toole and every Conservative candidate in this country has to answer the question. Will they support their leader who's promised the gun lobby that he'll bring back that gun and the 1,500 weapons that were designed for mass murder in this country? Not hunting weapons, not sport shooting weapons, weapons for combat. Weapons that were designed for soldiers to kill other soldiers, but tragically have been used by murderers to kill innocent Canadians. And so, we have made a commitment to Canadians that we will strengthen gun control in this country. We've brought forward significant new measures to improve lifetime background checks, better record keeping, to answer law enforcement's requests to access to the data they need to keep illegal guns out of this country and out of the hands of criminals. We've invested $347 million in law enforcement. We gave that money to the provinces and to the RCMP so that the police would have the resources they need to do the important gun and gang investigations that they need to do in our country. $65 million right here in Ontario to support the York Regional Police, the Toronto Police Service, the Peel Regional Police Service, every police service in Ontario. And when we provided that funding, Mr. O'Toole voted against it. So did all the Conservatives. And we also recognize it's not just about putting people in jail, but it's about keeping people out of jail. It's about making investments in communities that make a difference for our kids. It's about making sure that they understand the importance of making the right choices and that they can live in a society and a community that respects them and gives them every opportunity to be successful and to prosper and to be safe and to be good citizens. And so when we came forward and said, we're going to invest in the extraordinary community organizations that help those kids make the right choices. And in Budget 2021, we provided $250 million to those communities and those community organizations that are going to help kids, help their families, and help our communities be safe. And again, Mr. O'Toole voted against it. Mr. O'Toole says he's going to talk to law enforcement. Well, it'd be about time, because for over 10 years as the Chief of Police, we were ignored by the Conservatives, who curried favor with the gun lobby and ignored the real police leadership in this country. He says he's going to start listening to victims. About time. They've been crystal clear on what they want, which is stronger gun laws in this country and a government willing to stand up and back it up. And that's the government we offer to Canadians. And so I am very proud to stand with the Prime Minister, proud to stand with the Liberal government, and proud to represent the interest of Canadians. I've dedicated my life to keeping people safe, and this is the only government that has a real plan, an honest plan, to keep people safe. Mr. O'Toole has to be honest with Canadians. I know why he's being dishonest. I'm sure he must be embarrassed. Frankly, he should be ashamed that he has made promises to the gun lobby that are contrary to the interests of all Canadians. It's time to come clean. It's time to be honest. It's time for him to actually say what he's going to do about that gun and every one of the 1,500 guns that we prohibited, because they're used only to kill people. Thanks very much. I'd now like to turn it back to the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you as well to Paul Chiang for welcoming us here to Markham, Unionville. Paul, as a dad and a grandfather, as a former police sergeant, I know you understand the importance of keeping our communities safe, so thank you for being here. Big shout out as well to all the Liberal candidates here today, part of our extraordinary team. across the GTA and across the country. As I've said, we're here to stand up for what we believe, that these guns have no place in our communities and have no place anywhere in Canada. Quand on dit que notre priorité, c'est de protéger les Canadiens, c'est vrai contre la COVID, mais c'est aussi vrai contre le fléau de la violence liée aux armes à feu. The weapons that Bill just talked about, that are in the photos here today, are weapons designed to kill the largest number of people in the shortest amount of time. And they have. In Moncton, in Portapique, at Polytechnique, and in horrific crimes across the country and around the world. And now, Erin O'Toole wants to make these weapons legal again. It's on page 90 of his platform, 96 en français. It's what he promised the gun lobby and the far-right elements of his party. And he's trying to blatantly mislead Canadians about it. Well, we're not going to let that happen. We can't let the Conservative Party take Canada back to the Stephen Harper days when these assault weapons were legal, because the price to pay is much too high. I know that Bill mentioned some examples earlier, but it's important to be very clear about exactly what we banned and what Erin O'Toole would make legal again. The model that was used in the Moncton shooting, one that was carried by the gunman at the Quebec City Mosque. Two of them were used by the killer in Portapique. On a banni l'arme qui a été utilisée à Polytechnique. On a banni celle qui a été utilisée au Collège Dawson. On a banni ces armes qui ont fait des torts irréparables dans nos communautés. Et on va prendre encore plus de mesures. We're going to make it mandatory that these guns are sold back to the government for destruction or else be rendered fully and permanently inoperable. You can't buy these guns, you can't sell these guns, you can't use these guns. And even if you own one today, no one gets a pass. Community safety is not up for negotiation with the gun lobby. And you certainly don't hand them the pen to write your platform. That was his choice. It'll never be ours. We're putting a minimum of $1 billion on the table as well for provinces or territories that want to work with us to ban handguns, to keep cities and communities safe. On va obliger les propriétaires de ces armes d'assaut à les revendre au gouvernement pour les détruire, ou alors elles devront être rendues inutilisables de manière permanente. On est aussi prêt à investir au moins $1 milliard pour appuyer les provinces et les territoires comme le Québec qui veulent interdire tout court les armes de poing. L'année passée, on a banni 1500 modèles d'armes d'assaut et Erin O'Toole veut les rendre légales à nouveau. Il veut aussi annuler les vérifications des antécédents sur toute une vie, faire passer les intérêts du lobby des armes avant ceux des Canadiens. J'appelle pas ça du leadership. Surtout quand il essaye de cacher la vérité aux Québécois et aux Canadiens. Surtout quand on sait qu'il y a une augmentation de la violence liée aux armes à feu dans nos plus grandes villes. Le vrai leadership, c'est de s'assurer que vous et votre famille soyez en sécurité. Real leadership is putting your safety and the safety of your family first. It's true on guns, and it's true on vaccines. Erin O'Toole, and yes, Yves-François Blanchet, too, say they respect the choice of anti-vaxxers. But what about your choice? Here in Ontario, you've made it clear that you want a proof of vaccination system to help keep you safe and get everyone back to better days faster. Well, I'm right there with you. We'll foot the bill for provinces and territories to roll out proof of vaccination programs, just like we'll make sure everyone on a plane or a train is vaccinated. We must end this pandemic once and for all. So if you haven't already, now is the time to get your shot. Do it to protect yourself and your loved ones. And do it so we can all avoid future lockdowns and keep our economy growing strong. On est le seul parti qui va se tenir debout pour s'assurer que tout le monde à bord d'un train ou d'un avion soit vacciné. Parce que c'est le temps d'en finir avec la pandémie une bonne fois pour toutes. C'est le temps de se retrousser les manches pour bâtir un pays encore plus fort. C'est le temps de choisir un vrai plan, ambitieux et réalisable pour l'avenir. We'll invest in stronger public health care, not experiment with privatization. We'll make owning a home more affordable. We'll keep fighting for $10 a day childcare, including here in Ontario, so that kids can get the best start, parents can juggle work and family, and our economy comes back strong. We'll keep taking real, ambitious climate action, and we'll never make secret deals with the gun lobby like Aaron O'Toole did. Together, we'll get through this pandemic and we'll rebuild the brighter future we all want to see. On a fait beaucoup de chemin ensemble et je sais qu'on peut aller encore plus loin. Mes amis, on est prêts à continuer d'avancer. The choice Canadians have to make in this election will take us through not just the next few years, but the next few decades. And they matter. I'm ready for the hard work. I'm ready for hope. I'm ready to move forward for everyone. Merci.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trudeau. We'll now start the question period, 20 minutes. One question, one follow-up. En commençant avec Laurence Martin de la Radio-Canada.
Oui, bonjour, M. Trudeau. Sur les armes d'assaut, vous dites que le rachat va devenir obligatoire. C'est exactement ce que des groupes comme Police se souvient vous demandent depuis des années. Quand vous aviez l'occasion de le faire dans les dernières années, vous ne l'avez pas fait. Pourquoi?
On continue d'écouter, de travailler avec les groupes qui démontrent à quel point c'est important de renforcer le contrôle des armes à feu. On a banni les armes d'assaut de style militaire au mois de mai passé et on continue de travailler pour s'assurer que cette interdiction d'acheter, de vendre ou d'utiliser ces armes soit la plus forte possible. C'est pour ça qu'on va ou bien forcer les gens de les revendre au gouvernement pour être détruits, ou bien, aux frais du gouvernement, on va rendre ces armes permanemment inutilisables. Et c'est exactement le contraire de ce que M. O'Toole va faire, parce que lui, il va renverser notre interdiction de ces armes d'assaut, mais il n'est pas en train de l'avouer aux Canadiens. On l'a vu jeudi soir, qu'il ne peut pas être direct avec les Canadiens. Il est en train de se cacher derrière le lobby des armes à feu. Ce n'est pas ça le leadership que les Canadiens veulent.
En suivi?
Mais pourquoi est-ce que vous ne l'avez pas fait plus tôt si c'est si important pour vous?
On a élaboré un système où non seulement ces armes d'assaut, il y a une interdiction de les acheter, de les vendre ou de les utiliser. À partir du mois de mai passé, c'est fait. Et on travaille avec les communautés, on travaille avec les groupes qui défendent l'augmentation du contrôle des armes à feu pour justement assurer un programme de rachat qui soit adéquat. On va donner le choix aux gens. Ou bien ils revendent ces armes au gouvernement pour qu'on les détruise, ou bien on les rend permanemment inutilisables. C'est essentiel qu'il n'y ait plus personne qui puisse utiliser ces armes achetées de façon légale à servir à tuer le plus grand nombre de Canadiens en un plus court laps de temps. C'est pour ça que nous avions banni ces armes d'assaut et c'est pour ça que c'est complètement incompréhensible aux Canadiens que M. O'Toole veut rendre redisponible et légal et remettre en circulation ces 15 000 modèles d'armes d'assaut. We have made it impossible to buy or sell or use. We've made it illegal to buy, sell, or use these models of military-style assault weapons in Canada as of last May. We're putting forward a buyback program in which people will have the choice of either selling that gun back to the government to be destroyed or having the gun rendered permanently unusable. These are the choices that Canadians have. Except Mr. O'Toole has made a secret deal with the gun lobby to reverse that ban on these assault weapons. Military-style assault weapons that were used in places like Portapique and Moncton and l'École Polytechnique and in terrible killings around the world. Those guns have no place in Canada, but that's the choice Erin O'Toole is offering. To return to a time when these guns were legal in our country. That's not what Canadians want.
Next question.
Hi, just wondering about your $1 billion to the provinces and territories for the handgun regulation. I'm just wondering if any of them, because it was in the platform, if there has been any response or if any have indicated interest at this point.
We know that the province of Quebec, including a unanimous motion in the National Assembly of Quebec, has indicated that they want to be able to ban handguns entirely within their jurisdiction. And we've put forward $1 billion to help them and any other provinces do that. And obviously, if other provinces step up and we need to put more money for that, we will be there to be partners to ensure that those jurisdictions, as we have already said for cities and towns across the country, if they want to move forward on handgun bans, we will be there to support them and make it happen.
Yeah, just follow up, if handguns are definitely more common than these other weapons that we're talking about right now, why make that kind of not your responsibility and punt it to kind of these other jurisdictions?
Over the past 6 years, we have step by step improved and increased gun control in this country, to the point at which the gun lobby continues to mobilize extremely aggressively against the Liberal Party and against people who believe in strengthening gun control. That's why they made a secret deal with Erin O'Toole so he could win the leadership when he promised them that he would reverse the assault weapon ban that we brought in May of last year. And now Erin O'Toole is in a really difficult situation where he made a promise to some of those special interest groups like the gun lobby that he keeps making promises to. And at the same time, he's trying to pretend to Canadians that he didn't. So on Thursday night, he said, no, I'm not going to re-legalize assault weapons. But on page 90 of his platform, it says he will reverse our ban on 1,500 models of assault weapons across this country. So he's misleading and deceiving Canadians to try and get himself elected. That's not what Canadians need. That's not what Canadians want. So it's time for Mr. O'Toole to come clean with Canadians about the special deals he's made with them, with the gun lobby, and with any other special interest groups that he's busy defending against Canadians' interests.
Prochaine question.
Catherine Lévesque, La Presse canadienne. Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Sur un tout autre sujet, moi, je voulais revenir sur les 37 000 places en garderie parce que le bureau de M. Legault dit que c'est pas vrai, en fait, que l'argent du fédéral va servir à ça. Il réitère encore une fois que c'est une entente qui est sans condition. Donc, je me demandais qui dit vrai. Est-ce que c'est vous ou c'est M. Legault?
Le 6 milliards de dollars qu'on envoie au Québec pour les garderies, c'est une reconnaissance que ça fait 25 ans que le Québec est en train de mener sur les garderies. Et que les objectifs qu'on a fixés pour les autres provinces, c'est-à-dire au moins 10 $ par jour dans au moins 5 ans, au plus 5 ans, ça a déjà été rencontré depuis longtemps par le Québec. On est en train de s'inspirer du modèle québécois. Alors, on est très content de pouvoir transférer cet argent-là, qui est l'équivalent de ce qu'on est en train d'envoyer aux autres provinces, mais de dire au Québec, on vous fait confiance dans les investissements que vous avez à faire. Mais en tant que Québécois, en tant que quelqu'un qui a fait campagne au Québec, qui a parlé à énormément de familles québécoises, je sais qu'il y a encore trop de familles qui sont sur les listes d'attente, qui attendent pour plus de places en garderie. Alors quand M. Legault, à côté de moi, dans l'annonce, a confirmé qu'il pourrait, avec cet argent, choisir de créer 37 000 places en garderie à travers le Québec, je l'ai cru. Et je pense que les familles québécoises l'ont cru aussi. Alors, j'ai bien hâte de voir, dans les années à venir, le Québec créer plus que 30 000, peut-être 37 000 places en garderie, parce que c'est le premier ministre lui-même qui a dit que ça faisait partie de son objectif.
En suivi? Respectueusement, il parlait des places manquantes. Là. Il ne parlait pas qu'il allait écrire avec le 6 milliards. Mais j'ai une autre question sur votre candidat dans Trois-Rivières, Martin Francoeur. Il y a un éditorial là, qui est ressorti comme quoi il traite Chrystia Freeland d'épaisse de première classe. Il parlait des négociations dans CETA. Je me demandais, est-ce que vous condamnez cette expression, disons, très sexiste?
Tout à fait. Je pense que c'est important que tout le monde soit toujours respectueux, mais je comprends aussi que les journalistes et les éditorialistes ont une job importante à faire pour partager leurs perspectives, leurs opinions. Mais je sais que Martin Francoeur, en tant que candidat pour le Parti libéral dans Trois-Rivières, va continuer de démontrer sa passion pour les Mauriciens, son intérêt dans leur avenir et son ouverture à travailler avec notre équipe extraordinaire, certainement dont Chrystia Freeland, notre ministre des Finances, pour bâtir un Canada meilleur pour tout le monde, incluant les gens à Trois-Rivières.
Next question.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. It's Annie Bergeron-Oliver with CTV National News. As you mentioned in your opening remarks, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig have now been detained for 1,000 days. Diplomats have accused your government of essentially deserting these two men. Other than encouraging other countries to condemn their arbitrary detention, what concrete steps have you taken to get these men released?
Over the past 6 years, this government has stepped up repeatedly on fighting for Canadians who are being detained arbitrarily or wrongfully in countries around the world. And we've been significantly more successful than the previous government was because we use all the tools at our disposal. Usually not shouting in the public square. We usually lean in and put pressure on them, on those countries in various ways to ensure that we can get Canadians home in a way that is quiet and effective. Because not only does that bring the people we need home, but it also is an example of the fact that we're going to be able to continue to work to get people home from elsewhere. So I can assure you that this government, over the past 1,000 days, has put forward all the different range of tools that we have to put pressure on the Chinese government to return Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, on our allies to influence them and to have them advocate for us and also for themselves, because no country wants to see any of their citizens arbitrarily detained for political purposes from the Chinese government or any other government. So there are things that, as you point out, Annie, are very visible in what we have done, like getting dozens and dozens of countries to sign on to a declaration on arbitrary detentions, the pressure that different communities, different countries have put directly on China that they have talked about. But there are also a lot of things we are doing in a less visible way with the American government, with partners and allies, and indeed putting pressure directly on the Chinese government as well. We will not rest until the two Michaels are once again home with their families.
En français.
Okay. Quand nous avions formé le gouvernement en 2015, je me suis fait une promesse qu'on allait en faire beaucoup plus pour aider les Canadiens en difficulté, en détention à travers le monde. Et au fil des dernières années, on a vu beaucoup de réussites, justement de ramener des gens. Et ça n'a pas toujours été fait dans les manchettes, par des attaques hautement visibles. Ça a souvent été fait par un jeu diplomatique, de la pression directe en conversation que j'avais avec d'autres leaders. On a utilisé bien des différents moyens de le faire et je peux vous assurer qu'on est en train d'utiliser tous les moyens qu'on pense pourraient fonctionner sur cette situation, avec nos alliés, avec les Américains, et directement à mettre de la pression sur les Chinois aussi, tout en restant ferme qu'on va toujours faire tout ce qui est nécessaire pour les ramener et pour respecter la règle de droit.
Following up.
As a follow-up, you talked about using all the tools in your disposal, but respectfully, sir, it doesn't seem like that's really working, considering Mr. Spavor has now been sentenced and Mr. Kovrig is waiting for a court date. So I'm wondering if anyone in your government has negotiated directly with Chinese officials, and why haven't you implemented any sanctions in retaliation against China?
We will continue to use all the methods that we think are in the best interests of both Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, but also the best interests of Canada and of all Canadians. That is what people expect us to do. That is what we have been doing consistently over the past 1,000 days. And we will continue to do that and continue to put all the pressure possible and necessary on the Chinese government to return them to Canada.
Next question.
Good morning, Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News. You defended Raj Saini. He's now no longer a Liberal candidate after your party says it received new information. I understand you can't comment on specifics, but broadly speaking, what changed? Did additional misconduct allegations come to light?
I think everyone is frustrated, me included, certainly, that the best answers we tend to be able to give on allegations of sexual misconduct or harassment is always, we followed an independent process, we're following the rules as best we can, we're making sure that everyone gets heard, but answering process on something that matters so deeply to so many people who have suffered in their own workplaces, people who've seen their loved ones, their sisters, their friends suffer from workplaces and environments in which the unacceptable has too long been tolerated. But there really isn't a better answer to be had than we put in place new, stronger processes than had ever been in place before. And in every situation, we make sure we're following them as best we can and being as supportive and as responsive and as there for anyone who comes forward with allegations as is possible. And yes, it's unsatisfactory in many situations. It's not clear. And respecting confidentiality of people who come forward and respecting the integrity of the process means we can't even say half as much as perhaps we would like to be able to say. But respecting the process, respecting people's privacy, respecting the integrity of the approach that we have to take means that there are no easy answers on this. There are no straightforward answers the way I'd like to. So we had a process that went through this, the allegations that were there a year ago, and we were confident in our ability to move forward with Mr. Saini as a candidate. New allegations came forward very recently, and now Mr. Saini is no longer our candidate. Je comprends à quel point c'est frustrant pour tout le monde, moi inclus, quand la seule réponse qu'on peut donner à des questions comme ça, des questions si importantes pour tant de monde, c'est on a un processus et on l'a suivi. Bien sûr, ce n'est pas satisfaisant pour les gens qui veulent savoir que les choses sont en train de changer, veulent savoir qu'on est là pour défendre ces femmes, surtout ces femmes, qui, dans trop de lieux de travail, pendant trop longtemps, ont souffert de l'harcèlement, de l'intimidation, des commentaires déplacés. On a amené des nouveaux processus. On les a appliqués de façon rigoureuse. On cherche toujours à les améliorer. Mais à l'intérieur de ces processus, il y a des besoins de garder une certaine mesure de confidentialité, une certaine rigueur pour protéger ceux qui viennent rapporter, mais aussi pour s'assurer que c'est un processus intègre. Ce n'est pas une réponse très satisfaisante. On veut savoir que, bam, on va tout réparer rapidement. Mais la vie, ce n'est pas comme ça. Alors, dans cette situation, on a suivi les processus en place. On va toujours continuellement réviser ces processus pour voir s'il y a d'autres choses qu'on doit faire, d'autres façons de modifier, d'apprendre de ce qu'on est en train de faire. Mais pour l'instant, c'est la seule réponse que je peux donner, qu'on a amené des nouveaux processus, on les a suivis, puis on va constamment les réviser pour voir comment ça aurait pu être mieux que la situation dans laquelle on se retrouve finalement.
Following up.
You just said new allegations came forward against Raj Saini. What kind of allegations are these? Are these misconduct allegations that we're talking about? How many allegations, and when did you become aware of them?
For confidentiality reasons, I'm not at liberty to disclose more of this information. Suffice it to say that Mr. Saini is no longer our candidate. Yeah. Pour des raisons dont j'ai parlé de confidentialité, je ne peux pas en dire plus, mais je vais assurer tout le monde que M. Saini n'est plus notre candidat à Kitchener.
Next question.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. Laura Stone from the Globe and Mail. You say people are frustrated. What do you say to those who are extremely frustrated, angry, and disillusioned with you of how you've handled this situation, including your own supporters? Emails show that concerns were raised to members of the Liberal Party at the highest echelons months ago, and candidates, and yet he was still allowed to run. So what do you say to those people, and do you have any regrets about how you've handled this situation?
Obviously, this is a far from ideal situation that we no longer have any candidate in that riding. There is going to be lots of reflections on what we could have, should have done differently. But my primary concern in this is making sure that we have a process that we can apply rigorously in every different situation. And that is what we put in place over the past years, both within our party, within Parliament, and we can only apply that process and reflect on, are there ways to improve that process? And I can't even talk about the details of what was put forward, what happened on this allegation or that allegation. Suffice it to say that we had a process that was rigorously followed, which is an unsatisfactory answer, and I understand people being angry about it. I'm pretty frustrated about the whole thing myself. Because one of the things that has driven me in politics from the very beginning as leader of the Liberal Party is to be there, to stand up for people facing harassment and intimidation in situations they should never have to go through that. That's why we move forward, to transform the way these things are dealt with. But obviously, there are always ways to improve and to strengthen these processes.
Following up.
So can you commit now to launching a third-party investigation of this new allegation? And say Mr. Saini were to win that seat, can you say today whether he would definitely not sit in the Liberal caucus?
The choice on what actually happens on these complaints is quite rightly on the complainants themselves. And if they don't want to pursue a further investigation or follow-ups, we still have ways of doing reviews that we will make sure are done. Because absolutely we need to learn from this situation. And Mr. Saini will not be a member of the Liberal Party caucus, regardless of what happens.
Next question.
Abigail Beeman, Global News. Following up on what Laura asked you, I'm wondering if you personally regret waiting so long to make this decision, and I'm wondering if you feel that you've personally let down either the women involved who have come forward and the Liberal supporters in that riding.
As I said, we had a process that we went through a year ago on the allegations that came forward a year ago, and the independent, rigorous conclusion was that we could proceed with Mr. Saini as our candidate. Recently, very recently, perhaps linked to the visibility of this issue in the news over the past number of days and week, there have been new informations that came forward that have resulted in Mr. Saini no longer being our candidate.
Following up.
Well, that didn't answer either the questions of regret or letting people down, but moving on to another topic. We haven't seen you since the new modeling was released to ask you about that. I'm wondering if your campaign is making any changes because of that modeling.
We are constantly reviewing and updating our procedures with experts. Our campaign obviously features people who are fully vaccinated, but who also get regularly tested, and we will continue to adjust to make sure that we're keeping our candidates, our volunteers, our campaign team, and the Canadians that we're talking with about this incredibly important choice on how we end this pandemic and how we move forward, keeping everyone safe.
Next question.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News. I want to ask you, you're heading to a hospital. You talk about vaccinations, how important it is that people get these vaccinations. For unvaccinated people who are starting to fill up those hospital spots, which we're seeing in many provinces across this country, certain procedures are going to the wayside, procedures that are vital. I know it's provincial jurisdiction. However, would you support policies that prioritized vaccinated patients over those who are unvaccinated, who are in there because they made that choice?
I have heard from healthcare professionals across the country who are, as we know, exhausted from the past year and a half, who are worried about their own loved ones, who are working incredibly hard to keep all Canadians safe, whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated, but who are expressing increasing frustration and little bits of anger that they are spending so much of their time trying to save people who could have saved themselves by listening to what doctors and experts have been saying for months, which is get vaccinated to keep yourself safe. And I'm not going to get into provincial decisions on triage, but I will say that the way through this is to get vaccinated. And I've heard Mr. O'Toole and Mr. Blanchette talk about, oh, we just need more education. We've been talking about this. Experts have been talking about this. People have been doing community outreach for months and months now to help people get through the hesitancy. And almost 80% of Canadians have done the right thing, made those sacrifices, chose to step up and get vaccinated so they could keep themselves safe, but mostly so we could get through this pandemic. And now is the time for people who are still resistant to getting vaccinated to realize that that choice, which has consequences on putting our kids at risk, which has consequences at having us risk more lockdowns because they haven't chosen to get vaccinated yet, that there will be consequences for those people in not being able to go to a gym or a restaurant, not being able to go to a movie theater, not being able to get on a train or a plane. These are the choices that we are making, because education can and will continue. But people need to understand that even if they make the choice to not get vaccinated, they don't get to choose to put others at risk on planes or in restaurants or in movie theaters, which is why we are working with the provinces who bring in vaccine mandates. We are ensuring that federal public servants and people on planes and trains and other places need to be vaccinated so they don't put us or our kids who can't yet get vaccinated at risk. Je ne vais pas me pencher sur la préoccupation, la décision difficile que doivent faire ces travailleurs en santé et les systèmes de santé provinciaux, mais je veux reconnaître que ces médecins, ces infirmières qui travaillent depuis 18 mois maintenant pour nous garder en sécurité, qui travaillent jusqu'à l'épuisement et au-delà de l'épuisement pour nous garder en sécurité, je les comprends d'être frustrés, qui sont en train de se casser le dos pour soigner des gens qui ont fait le choix de ne pas écouter la science, la médecine moderne, qui ont fait le choix de ne pas se faire vacciner. Je comprends cette frustration, mais nous allons continuer de faire tout ce qu'on peut pour garder tout le monde en sécurité, y compris ceux qui ont fait le choix de ne pas se faire vacciner. C'est qui nous sommes en tant que Canadiens. Mais nous avons aussi pris le choix de dire, OK, ceux qui ont fait ce qu'il fallait faire, ils vont avoir plus d'opportunités et plus de privilèges, et ceux qui n'ont pas fait ce qu'il fallait faire ne vont pas avoir accès aux mêmes choses non essentielles, ou aux trains ou aux avions, pour ne pas mettre à risque d'autres gens, particulièrement nos enfants qui ne peuvent pas se faire vacciner encore.
Following up.
Sorry, I want to kind of push back a little bit on the fact that you say you don't want to comment on the triage because it's a provincial jurisdiction, but so are movies, so are gyms, all of those types of things. And you also say, you look pretty angry about it, that they're putting, you know, kids and people who are vulnerable at risk. Are they not putting some people who may not get the treatment they need in hospitals at risk?
First of all, movie theaters and restaurants being provincial jurisdictions is exactly why we are offering to the provinces to pay for the vaccine certification or mandate programs. Right after we announced that we were going to do that, Ontario finally stepped up and did the right thing and said they're going to move forward with vaccine mandates for non-essential services. So yes, the federal government has a role to play in there. And yes, we can all say to a certain extent that it is unfortunate that people who chose not to get vaccinated are now the ones clogging up our ICU systems and our hospital beds that should be available for people who did their work and did get vaccinated and now need a hip replacement or other types of surgery that is being pushed aside. That is really unfortunate, and that is why we are unequivocal on moving forward to make sure that people know that they don't get to put others at risk by not getting vaccinated on planes or trains or in movie theaters or restaurants. That's why we're working with the provinces, and every time there's an announcement about vaccine mandates or passports, and certainly as the winter holidays approach and people realize they might want to go down with their family to enjoy a little sunshine, they might realize, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to have to get vaccinated now. We have to make sure that people choose to get vaccinated, and the best way to do that is to be unequivocal in our leadership. Nous savons qu'on doit utiliser tous les différents moyens possibles pour que les gens choisissent d'être vaccinés. C'est pour ça que nous travaillons avec les provinces sur ces mandats de vaccination, sur les exigences que tout le monde en train ou en avion soit vacciné, pour enfin convaincre les gens de ce que la simple éducation n'a pas été assez à faire, que c'est dans leur intérêt de se faire vacciner, pour même pas parler de ceux qui sont pris dans les hôpitaux maintenant, dans les soins d'urgence, parce qu'ils ont choisi de ne pas se faire vacciner, qui maintenant sont en train de lutter pour leur vie.
We'll take one last local question.
Hello, Prime Minister. I'm April from Business News North America, Coast.com. So some gun control advocates said they're losing hope that a Liberal government will follow through on campaign promises if it remains in power. So what's your comment on that?
In 2019, we made a promise to ban military-style assault weapons in this country. And that's exactly what we did less than a year later. In May of 2020, we banned 1,500 different models of military-style assault weapons in this country. And we are moving forward with a mandatory buyback program that gives people the choice of either selling their guns back to the government for it to be destroyed, or rendering those guns permanently unusable. That is keeping our promise. Mr. O'Toole, the Conservative leader, wants to make those guns legal again. And he's misleading and deceiving Canadians about that promise, even though it's written in his platform on page 90 that he will reverse our ban on 1,500 different models of military-style assault weapons. He's trying to pretend to Canadians that that's not what he'll do. I know Canadians want to see these guns out of our communities, that no one should have access to guns that are designed to kill the largest number of people in the shortest amount of time. And that's part of the really important choice Canadians get to make in this election. Do we bring these guns back, or do we keep them illegal and get them out of our communities for good?
Thank you. This is what ends today's press conference.
Merci tout le monde.